I know, I look like a ghost. Maybe I am a ghost to America. Maybe all Asian Americans are ghosts to America. We're like these shadowy figures that lurk in the corner. We do your dry cleaning. We cook your favorite takeout General Tso's chicken. We're your dentists. We're your CPA. We're the software developer. We're that nice girl who works in accounting, but what's her name again? Her name is so difficult to remember. It's foreign. Our Asian parents, my Korean parents, came to America to give their children a better life.
A 91-year-old man pushed in Oakland's Chinatown, one of 3 attacks that day.
My mother, she's almost 70 years old, and she graduated from Ewha Women's University in Seoul, South Korea. But all my life, she's worked at the United States Postal Service. My mother, she showed me her hands recently, and she was like, look, 부었어, which means my hands, they're swollen, my joints, they're swollen. Because of federal government cutbacks and the USPS cutting back on staff, my mother, my 70-year-old mother, she has to lift heavy boxes. And this is the sacrifice that she made for her 2 daughters, to come to America in the 1980s, barely knowing the language, not knowing the culture, not really knowing how to drive. I am an American, and my passport says I'm an American. All my paperwork says to me, swears to me that I am an American, and yet Americans forever see me as a foreigner.
This surveillance footage shows a 71-year-old Asian grandmother violently shoved to the ground, her purse stolen. Just one of several attacks in California's Bay Area recently.
And forget all the specific countries that Asian Americans come from and how all these Asian countries, they actually hate each other. It's like Americans, they just like to clump us together in this big mass and just label us Asian.
A friend of mine who's not Chinese, she's actually Korean, had dropped off her children at a local school in Flushing and was berated and attacked by someone who called her a diseased Chinese. And it was a physical attack. Her face was bleeding, and instead of arresting her assailant, she was arrested and taken to the hospital for treatment in handcuffs.
If people currently in East Asia, like people in China or North Korea, if they act like assholes, it really has nothing to do with what I've done or what my 70-year-old mother has done, okay? We've been living in America for like 40 years, and yet I can present all the evidence in the world that shows that what the government of China does in 2019, 2020 has nothing to do with my 70-year-old Korean American mother who is lifting heavy boxes so that you can get your Amazon order. Even though I can present you all the evidence that she's an American, do you think it's safe for her to walk outside in our suburban neighborhood?
84-year-old Thai American Visha Ratanapakdi knocked over while out for a walk. He died a few days later from his injuries.
Can the little ones in my family, the babies and the toddlers, can they be safe? Crimes against Asian Americans is up 1,900% since the start of the pandemic. 1,900% in 1 year. And notice, Americans of Asian descent, the ones being attacked, they're the children and the elderly, the ones who can't defend themselves. I honestly don't know what to do. I really don't, because my heart is broken, utterly broken. But our parents raised us to just move on, don't dwell on these injustices, just keep moving because there's nothing we can do about it. So our parents, they sacrificed their bodies for what?
Julie Vu, who works as an activist against OC hate crime, says her dad was beaten last month as he walked in his neighborhood park. The suspect didn't try to rob him. Her dad ended up in the hospital with a brain injury. Minor, thank goodness.
I feel like there's only a few things that I can actually have some power over. And so that's all I can really focus on right now, right? We do what we can. We just try to do what we can control. And what I'd like to present to you are some stories of Asian Americans. Stories of my community. And because this is a channel that shares spiritual practices that may be hidden from the mainstream, I'd like to share the stories of especially East Asian practitioners, witches, occultists, those who are on a path of seeking spirituality. We all have different stories, even though we're all East Asian. So you can click above me for the story of Shaman Jen. She's a Korean American who was initiated into traditional Korean shamanism. Earlier in this video, those pictures, she was a Korean American in Flushing, Queens who was attacked. If you've seen my article about Lovecraft country and Korean shamanism, you probably heard this interview. It was up on the Witches and Wine audio experience, which is the podcast, audio-only version of this YouTube channel. But now I actually want to put it up on the YouTube channel. Also up here is a completely new interview that I did with David Shi, who is the author of the book North Asian Magic. This interview was actually originally a roundtable with David and Shaman Jen, but the audio got really messed up. Fortunately, I was able to save David's audio. Both David and Jen, they're combining their Asian American lived experiences with more traditional Korean and Mongolian shamanistic paths. So I'll be updating these cards throughout the day, so there might not be any cards. You might be thinking, what is she even pointing at? So right after I upload this video, the cards may not show up, but they will show up later in the day. I suggest that you start with this brand new video interview. Benabel Wen, Ryan Trin, Fei Lu, and myself, talking about how Asian Americans today practice their witchcraft, and we're all on different spiritual paths. It's the largest, and perhaps the only, first, and probably only, group of Asian American occultists and witches that I've seen. I hope that you enjoy these interviews, but more than that, I hope that you share them, and to normalize Asian faces being part of Western occultism, as well as English-speaking discussions about the occult, whether it's in the new country or old country. And please use the hashtag #StopAsianHate. And please use Stop Asian Hate all over your social media, because it's only now that mainstream media has started to report on this year-long 1,900% increase in violence, assault, and death, murder against Asian American children and elderly people. There's a good chance that this is the first time you're hearing about it. Again, the mainstream media, they've just been really slow and disinterested in what's been affecting Asian Americans. So please, #StopAsianHate. Usually I'm not a big fan of performative allyship and just using hashtags, but considering that mainstream media has done a shitty job reporting it, we need all the boosting that we can get. So please share this with your non-Asian community so that everyone knows what's going on, that there is this 1,900% increase in murder, assault, and violence against Asian American children and elderly people, the most vulnerable members of our society, being attacked simply because they happen to look like people who live an ocean and a continent away.